Welcome back, Betting Public Sports Show. I'm your beloved host, Fame Rothstein, and as you can see, uh, man who really needs no introduction if you follow hip hop. But I'll try my best. He's an accomplished author, television producer, and a retired LA cop. Bring to you none other than Mr. Greg Kading. How you doing today, sir?
I'm good, Fame. Good to
Yes,
see
sir.
you. Good to
I
talk to you,
appreciate you
bud.
spending some time with us.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
Okay, so let's just try to condense the early part here. Like what? Okay, tell us about how long were you in LAPD?
I retired after doing 25 years.
Okay, so you did 25 years.
Yeah,
Okay,
20,
and
but I've been retired for almost 15. I retired in 2010, so it's been a
nice.
minute.
Okay, so how long were you on the force? Because you're most notably known for. Let me make sure say it right. You solved the Biggie murder, and the Tupac murder was just attached to it.
Yeah, our directive was to try to solve Biggie's murder because obviously that one happened within our jurisdiction in Los Angeles. Tupac's murder, everybody always assumed was somehow related, but of course that happened in Las Vegas under their jurisdiction. So just by being involved in Biggie's, you kind of naturally get involved in Tupac's because of the crossover of all of the different people that were involved.
Oh, okay, okay. And at that point, what year was that you got assigned to the Biggie murder?
I got assigned way after the fact. It was a cold case. Biggie was murdered in 1997. I didn't even get involved on that case until 2006. So nearly 9 years later.
Okay, at what point in your career were you in at around that time?
I was a detective working narcotics. At that particular time, I was working what we call major violators, major narcotics. And I was, looked like a dope cop. I had the facial hair and longer hair on top. And I guess got recruited to work on Biggie's case because they wanted some new detectives to take a look at it. Because at that point in time, it was unsolved and there was a big lawsuit that was being waged against the city of Los Angeles, claiming that some dirty cops had possibly been involved and there was a cover up. And so the department and the city wanted new investigators to look at the case and see if they could solve what hadn't been solved yet.
Oh, okay. And so, and you were granted I guess the opportunity to do it to make a task force. Is that right?
Yeah, because I knew that if it's just the LAPD, self-exonerating themselves, it doesn't really, there's still going to be skepticism
Yeah.
about whether we were involved or not. So I thought the best way to do this was to get other agencies with, with their own credentials, like the U.S. Attorney's Office, the FBI, the DEA, and getting a bunch of other people involved so that if we did solve the case, it would be, a joint effort being looked at without just the LAPD saying, "Hey, we weren't involved."
Okay. Okay. I gotta ask you this, being an LA cop, did you know any of those OJ detectives? Lang Van Adder, Mark Furman?
No, I didn't know any of them personally. I knew of them obviously because of the case and all the coverage that it got, but I never actually knew them personally.
Okay, no dealings with any of those. I was just wondering, were they like that with it, on the what you see on the trial and whatnot? But nonetheless,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, I don't have any personal experience with any of those guys.
okay, okay. So, um, and so your work. What were you thinking when you walked into it? Like, we'll never find nothing. It's one of those, hood murders where nobody's talking.
No, I mean, you don't want to go into it with a defeatist attitude. You want to go into it hoping that you're going to uncover something that hadn't been uncovered. So, your whole goal is to try to solve and get to the truth of the matter. So our thought process was simply, let's treat all the different theories as if they could be true until we prove them to be untrue. And then through a process of elimination, we'll get to the one that is left standing.
Okay. How much input did you have with any of the other like nearby agencies or that were connected, like Las Vegas or the Compton gang unit, anything like that?
So back in the early days of the investigations, back in 96 and 97, when the murders had happened, there was a lot of, collaboration taking place between the different agencies. But then 10 years later, when I'm involved, they're essentially cold cases. Nobody was actively working Tupac's case in Vegas. Biggie's case, we were doing this resurrected reinvestigation of all the work that had been already done in his case. So there was collaboration, and then the interagency collaboration between all the task force members. Everybody was bringing different things to the table with the hopes of solving it.
Nice, nice. Okay, so let me ask you this: what made you have to, or did you even have to? I'm just trying to, recount everything you've done. Um, did you have to go deep into the Tupac murder to solve Biggie case?
No, not really. We expected that there would be some correlation just because of the different players that were involved. There was this long history of conflict that had been established between Bad Boy Records and Death Row Records. There was a long history of conflict that existed between Puffy Combs and Suge Knight. There was a long history of conflict between Tupac and Biggie. There's a long history of conflict between the gangs that both of those labels were associating with. So there was definitely this expectation that there would be some correlation between the murders.
Oh wow, oh, that's it, and that's what I want to ask you because I've seen you on Vlad a million times, and he has, had a million other interviews about the Tupac murder. And from what I could tell, this guy from the Compton gang unit, Robert Ladd,
Mm-hmm.
uh, he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem to be a fan of you personally, but if you ask me, he's trying to indict somebody, not indict, but suggest that somebody connected to the label might be involved in the Tupac and Biggie murder. He just can't say it on the screen. Is that? I mean, what's your? I guess what are your thoughts on him as a professional?
I don't know Robert Ladd. I've never met Robert Ladd. I've never spoken to Robert Ladd, so
Uh-huh.
I don't know him at all. He was not involved in our case whatsoever. He had some involvement way back at the time that Tupac was murdered, and the Las Vegas Police Department suspected that some gang members from Compton were involved in Tupac's murder. And so there was some communication going on between Bobby Ladd and his partner, a guy named Tim Brennan. They were providing some details about some local gang members to Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
But then when we came along and started our investigation, Robert Ladd was not in any way, shape, or form involved in that. And I also am a little skeptical about any cop detective that says, these are long, you know, um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
old cases. And to
Mm-hmm.
say that I can't talk about this or I can't talk about that, why not?
I agree. I agree. I understand. I understand. Okay, let's go back to September 1996, Tupac's murder. I know that wasn't your case, but I'm sure you saw the video in the MGM Graham, the fight,
Mm-hmm.
and everything led up to it. Has it ever been publicly acknowledged what the guy said in Tupac's ear before he kind of took off?
No, the only person that would actually know that would be a guy named Trayvon Lane, who was standing with Tupac
Mm-hmm.
at the time that Tupac took it upon himself to run over and sucker punch a guy named Orlando Anderson. So
Right.
Trayvon Lane was the only one that was there present and had this, interaction, conversation with Tupac. The story is that he pointed out Orlando Anderson to Tupac and said, "Hey, there's that guy that had tried to steal my chain months earlier." Because Orlando Anderson had gotten into a fight with Trayvon Lane at a mall in Southern California and tried to steal his death row medallion. And so now when they see Orlando Anderson in the lobby of the MGM, Trayvon Lane tells Tupac, "Hey, there's enemies amongst us. These are these Crips from LA. These are the guys that tried to steal my chain." and Tupac took it upon himself to go over and assault Orlando. And in doing that, he basically signed his own death warrant.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I kind of want to get to, that part of it, because is he just was Tupac just an unlucky guy, or I mean, like, how do you, or was that, or could that have been planned? Let's just be honest about it, because like I just don't see how somebody could be that unlucky to see their friends as ops, in another town, in the Vegas casino where there's probably 20,000 people there in a watching a fight, leave, go to the strip, and run into the guy. And the guy looks for him and finds him a half hour later. So is there any way that any of that could have been all planned out?
Well, in the realm of what's possible in the universe, you could say, yeah, it's possible, but it's not probable, nor is there any evidence to support the idea that it was pre-planned. It was all incidental. It was all coincidental. These guys used to go, death row guys, Southside Crip guys, they used to go to Vegas all the time to watch Mike Tyson fight. It was a well-known thing that Tyson had a following of particular people from Los Angeles who would go to Vegas to watch the fights. So that is not unusual at all. As a matter of fact, they had all been out there the previous year when Tyson had fought in Vegas. So the fact that they run into him at a place where they're already normally congregating, it's not unusual at all. And there's nothing to suggest that Orlando Anderson went out there with any intention to commit a murder. It's just that after he was attacked, he did what gang members do, and they retaliate.
Oh, so Tupac, it was just okay. I guess he was just that unlucky. It was I don't know, just that the way those events line up and happen. It's like, wow, maybe you just marked that night. There's nothing you were gonna get out of it. So, but
No, because listen, first of all, how are you going? Tupac's the one that had taken the aggressive action. Tupac was the one that caused that to happen. So how can you say it would be planned unless you can somehow, control Tupac's mind and get him to, okay, we're going to set this thing up, and what we need to do is get Tupac to fight one of us first. Okay, how do you plan that?
all I'm saying is this. All I'm saying, this is a question I've had for 30 years. But we saw him walking over there, and nobody seemed to try to stop him. And they know who he was walking up on, Orlando Anderson, a known. From my understanding, all accounts, he was like that guy when it came to the gang banging. And
Yeah.
they know he's walking up on a known guy who's with the business. Nobody tried to stop him.
Well, how though there's one of those motherfuckers that jumped me, there's a guy that tried to steal my chain, and then Tupac just runs over and hits him.
Right.
How do you stop him from that? I mean, I don't think Trayvon Lane ever thought that Tupac was just going to take off like that and go sucker punch Orlando. But if you know anything about Tupac, that dude was a very temperamental guy, and he had, he's a strong-willed guy, and if Tupac thinks that he's going to prove himself to these other guys that he is ingratiating himself with this gang, and he says he's going to go and step up and, for lack of a better term, represent. You can't control that.
Indeed. It was, like I said, just
Yeah.
something. I'm glad you're here to give the insight from the investigative point of view. I appreciate that. Again, we're sitting here talking with Greg Kading, or if you listen to Bomb First and Reggie Wright, Greg Kadings. But he's most known for the solving the Biggie murder in connection, and having being very instrumental in the Tupac investigation, to where former gang member Keffe D is being charged in Las Vegas for the murder. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's Orlando Anderson's uncle, the one who's one of the four people that were inside of the Cadillac that pulled up along side Tupac and Suge Knight and shot and killed Tupac. Keffe D is the only person in that vehicle that's still alive. Orlando Anderson's dead. DeAndre Smith is dead, and Brown is dead. I'm missing his name real quick. The driver.
Lotto or whatever they called him.
Yeah, Terrence Brown. So Keffe D is the last man standing. He confessed to his role in the murder, and that confession led to his indictment and arrest, and now he's facing obvious trial over it.
Okay, so now Keffe D is also, he was given what, a queen for a day agreement when he came across you. How did that kind of happen?
Yeah, so back in 2008, 2009, we knew that we wanted to talk to him about his possible involvement in Biggie's murder, because we knew that he had been at the Peterson Auto Museum the night that Biggie was shot and killed. We thought that he might have some information, but we also knew that he's, lives by this code of the streets. He's not going to just walk into the police department and, volunteer any information. So we built a big drug case against him, which would compel him to hopefully tell us the truth. That was the strategy, is that put some leverage on him, which is what we did. And so he sat down and had what we call a proffer agreement, where he's allowed to discuss his criminal activities, and he's expected to answer us honestly, but we will not then use that information against him. Any self-incriminating information we wouldn't use. Well, he went outside of that agreement and began to publicly talk about his role in the murder, and that isn't protected. That can be used against him, and he just learned out the hard way that when you go out there and you start boasting about being involved in a murder, people are going to listen. And Las Vegas listened and decided that they had enough evidence to prosecute him.
Wow. What are your I guess what are your personal, if you had to vote on the jury today, what would you say? He's going to be convicted or not?
Yeah, I think he'll take a plea agreement. I think at some point in time he'll plead out to some type of offer, something less than life. And then he'll realize that if he goes to trial, he's going to lose. You've got multiple times where he's confessed to his role in the murder. And so I think his attorney will be like, hey, man, take a deal. If they offer you 15 years, take it. So that's what I predict. I predict that he'll take a plea agreement.
Right. Oh, wow. So, okay. So now you had to personally talk with Keffe D when you wrote a book. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I mean, we interviewed him multiple times. We interviewed him when, we talked about Tupac's murder. We talked about Biggie's murder. We talked about his narcotic activity. We interviewed him multiple times. And it was whatever information we gleaned from him is much of the information that I included in the book. And then, of course, that story got told again in a documentary.
Okay. Now, if I'm not mistaken, did you not have to go to, or you not have to, but you went to his house and told him like, hey, got a book coming out. You might want to be safe or something like that. I mean, in a nutshell.
Yeah, I went and approached him, and I wanted to let him know that I was going to reveal the information that he had told us publicly, because I thought the public deserved to know what happened. And I just let him know, like, hey, this is all going to be out in the public domain. Just letting you know ahead of time that, what you told us, I'm telling other people.
Absolutely. Okay. I got to ask you, okay? So you're in the department, over 10 years. You're investigating the Biggie murder, which is gonna have a link to the Tupac murder one way or another. And you're a detective in a major American city. At what point did you realize, like, wow, I kind of hit the lottery here?
Never thought about it like that.
Okay.
I never thought about it in those terms. I just thought about it in the terms of these were two unsolved cases. There were a lot of conspiracy theories looming around. There were a lot of innocent people being falsely accused of being involved in these murders. So I thought, you know, I value truth, and I think when you have you defend truth and you promote truth, and so that was the motive. The motive was to tell people what we knew.
Right. Right. Okay. I guess I was thinking more of along the, writing a book and your television series, which I watch probably 4 or 5 times, front to back every time.
Mm.
Um,
Well, the best way, you know, to communicate to the public, at least back at that time, for me was, well, I'll disclose everything in a book. You know, I didn't know that it would become a documentary at that time. I didn't know that the documentary would then become a limited series. You just, I'm putting the information out there in a book.
Mhm.
And then that organically led to somebody wanting to make a documentary. And then that organically led to somebody wanting to make a limited, you know, scripted series about the story. I didn't know any of those things would happen at the time when I decided to simply write a book.
Right. Okay. It was called Unsolved. It was started off on the USA Network, right?
Originally, and then Netflix bought it and put it in their library.
All right. And Josh Duhamel, the actor, he plays your character. He
Mm-hmm.
plays you in the TV series, the limited series, right?
Correct. Yeah, he was the actor that portrayed my character in the show.
Okay. What did you have any like choice on that? Just curious. Like, did you have any?
I had no input on who was going to get that role, but once he was selected to play that part, I then got to hang out with him and share you know, for him to develop his character. I got, you know, spent time on the set, spent time with him personally so that he could get some insights um, you know, what we had done, what I had done during the investigation.
Okay, great, great. Okay, now let's just hop to the Biggie murder. This is why we're here because you saw me on the on your partner's site, wasn't it? Didn't he write the was he executive producer with you on Unsolved? The guy who does the deep dives. I can't think of his name.
Yeah, Michael Dorsey. Yeah, he was also a producer on Unsolved. He was the director and the producer of the documentary.
Right,
So I had met Mike when he made the documentary, but then the opportunity came for us to do this scripted series, and Mike also got involved in that as a producer.
right.
So yeah,
Okay, so like I said, she kind of, kind of went off on me on there. Right, it was, pleasant or anything, but yeah, you kind of explained why you say a man named Wardell Faust, aka Poochie, is the murderer of Biggie. Not has nothing to do with those composite sketches that Gene Deal gave.
yeah. So I'm repeating what I was told, and I was told by another co-conspirator. So there
Mm-hmm.
was a female that was involved in Biggie's murder. She was a baby mama to Suge Knight, and when she confessed to her role in the murder, she told us that she had, on the directions of Suge Knight, she had hired a guy named Wardell Faust to do the killing. And Wardell Faust was a friend of Suge Knight's. Wardell Faust was a known shooter. He was a gang member associated with the crew that Suge hung out with. And so he fit the profile of a guy that would retaliate in a gang shooting. And then she tells us that she had paid him. Suge had provided her with the money to pay him, and that she showed up at the Peterson Auto Museum that night. Next thing you know, um, uh, Biggie gets shot, and she says that Wardell Faust was the trigger man.
Okay, let me just show your background. That wasn't your first murder, right? Obviously, the
No.
Biggie murder. I'm
No, not
sorry.
at all. I'd been working homicide for years.
Exactly, exactly. I was just curious, like, how often do people let like a co-conspirator, as you say, co-conspirator, off the hook, on total immunity? I'm just curious.
Well, at that time when she confessed, she didn't have immunity.
Oh, oh, okay, wow. And she confessed anyway.
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She
And
ended up getting immunity after the fact, after she confessed to her role in the murder. Um, the idea was to utilize her as as an informant, and in order to try to get other co-conspirators like Suge Knight to have a conversation with her. So we're using her, as part of our investigative process, investigative tools, and she was given immunity to do that. But she had already confessed to her role in the murder before ever receiving any immunity.
indeed, indeed. Oh, and you guys uh reenacted a lot of that in your TV series, right? You know, like the conversations in
Yes.
jail and whatnot. Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And so she was the what the in between the money and Mr. Faust.
Yeah, because keep in mind, at this point in time, when Suge decides that he's going to retaliate against Bad Boy, he's in jail. So he's not on the streets. He can't really be out there, you know, calling the shots because he's behind bars.
Mm-hmm.
So it was arranged through Suge Knight's attorney, a guy named David Kenner, who was the death row attorney, arranged for people like this baby mama to come into the jail as a part of Suge's legal team,
Mm-hmm.
which gives them privileged communication, which means that they have the ability to have conversations that can't be monitored by law enforcement. And so David Kinner, the attorney, did something that was very, very unethical. And he listed her as a legal aid so that she could come in to help with Suge Knight's appeals. And that allowed her and Suge to have conversations. So she says that, yeah, I went there under the guise of being a legal aid. Me and Suge talked. Suge said, I want fucking Biggie taken care of. He's very upset about what happened in Vegas and about losing Tupac and about, being shot at himself. And rumor was happening in Los Angeles at that time. There was rumor going around that Biggie had been in Las Vegas, that Biggie had hired the Crips, that Biggie had provided the gun to kill Tupac. So that was the rumor, which is why Suge Knight targeted Biggie.
Mm.
Because the rumor on the streets was that Biggie was the one that was behind Tupac's murder. None of that was true, but that's what the streets were reporting. And just goes to show that, and this is not unusual, bad information gets good people killed.
Indeed, indeed. Man, so okay, so sticking with the Biggie killing, um, David Mack, professionally, did you have any dealings with him?
Mm-mm. No, he was another LAPD officer, but I'd never met him. Never even had heard of him until his name got dragged into the Biggie murder. So I didn't know anything about David Mack
Oh,
until, of course.
so his name officially got dragged into it. What did they say about him?
Well, so there's this a jailhouse informant, a guy named Michael Robinson. After Biggie was killed, this jailhouse informant contacted detectives at the LAPD and says, "Hey, I know something about this murder, and if you come talk to me, I'm in the county jail. I'll tell you what I know." So the detectives go down there, a guy named Ted Ball from LAPD, and they interview Michael Robinson. And Mike's like, yeah, the shooter was this Southside Crip, and he drives away, and he gives all this information. And he's just full of shit. He's just making shit up. And he goes, yeah, the shooter's name was like Abraham or Ashmir or Kenny or Kiki or Amir. He's given all these different names. And they're like, do you know this guy? He's like, yeah, oh yeah, I've known him for like 10, 15 years. I've know him real well. I can tell you everything about him, but can't even tell us his name.
Mm-hmm.
So the detectives realize this guy's full of shit. Well, then, you know, later on that year, a guy named David Mack robs a bank, and David Mack gets caught for this bank robbery. He's an LAPD officer who robs this bank. So during the time that he's in jail, he gets visited by a guy named Amir Mohammed, whose real name is Harry Billups.
Mm-hmm.
So a particular detective named Russell Poole who's working on Biggie's case. He's like, man, that's coincidental. You've got this informant saying there's a guy named Amir, among many other names. But then we've got David Mack, a dirty cop who's kind of acting like a gangster, who has a friend who visits him in jail named Amir Mohammed. So he connects these two circumstantial dots and begins to develop this theory that David Mack was involved in Biggie's murder. He discards all of the information that exonerates Amir Mohammed. He, when they go to talk to Michael Robinson, who says he's known Amir Mohammed for 10 to 12 years, Michael Robinson can't even pick out this guy's photograph.
Mm.
So let me ask you, you've got a buddy you've known 10 to 12 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I come and show you pictures of that guy. Are you going to be able to pick him out?
Should be, yeah.
Should be, right?
Yeah.
And if you can't, then I need to start asking myself, man, is Fame, does he really know this guy, or is he making this shit up?
Right.
Right.
Indeed.
So that's what the detectives did. They go, okay, well, we've got this guy, Amir Mohammed. He's a mortgage broker. He went to college with David Mack. He's a professional real estate agent, or he's a mortgage broker. And all of this other information that Michael Robinson says about him, that he's from Compton, that he's a member of the Crips, that he hangs out with and associates with these people, none of that is true. None of it's true.
Mm-hmm.
So they realize that this guy's just making shit up. And then ultimately, Michael Robinson comes forward and admits, yeah, I was making all this shit up. In fact, there was another informant that was in the same housing area as Michael Robinson in the county jail who was doing the same thing. He was on the side, contacting the LAPD, going, hey, man, I know who killed Biggie. It's this guy, and this guy. And then a third informant comes forward and tells the LAPD, hey, are you guys aware that Wayman Anderson, who's telling you this, and Michael Robinson, you realize those guys are talking, right? That they're collaborating and trying to sell you guys all this bullshit. Mm-hmm. They're both in jail at the time of the murders, and they're both just trying to get themselves some type of, some type of benefit by going to the LAPD and trying to, provide them information that they think will solve the murder. And it's just a bunch of fucking nonsense by typical jailhouse informants.
Indeed. Well,
so when you realize that the foundation of when you realize that the foundation of that whole theory implodes, that the foundation itself erodes, then everything that's built on that foundation necessarily collapses with it, and that's unavoidable. So when you realize Michael Robinson was lying, then everything that follows no longer has any relevance. You understand what I'm saying? So there's no Amir Mohammed. If there's no Amir Mohammed, there can't be a David Mack.
Indeed.
Because that's the only connecting tissue. That's the only connecting tissue.
Right. So what do you, ultimately, what
so
do you
when
think,
you've taken...
Go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead, finish.
Yeah, so that's it. It's so, but because of it's sensational and salacious and controversial, the public, and especially those people in the public that already look at law enforcement, with skepticism, they like that story. And they'll adopt that story as a true story because it already fits their preconceived biases. If they think cops are dirty, then when you hear a story about a dirty cop, like a bank robber, you're more inclined to believe that there's that he's done other bad stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the way that you conduct an investigation. That's not the way that you get to the truth. The only way to get to the truth is just to be honest about the facts and the evidence. And if something disproves your theory, then you have to look for a better theory.
Indeed. Now, okay, let me just ask you one last question before we have to wrap up here. What did you think of Mr. The detective you're just talking about? I'm sorry, Russell Poole.
Russell Poole?
Why do you think he was, kind of reaching for straws like on his investigative work?
Well, that's the thing is there was a lot going on in his personal life. There was a lot going on at work in his professional life. He didn't work on the case for that long. I mean, he's really only worked on Biggie's case for like 9 months. Mm-hmm. And then he got himself in some trouble at work. They reassigned him to another to another area, took him off Biggie's case, and he was getting disgruntled. And so when you get disgruntled and you begin to start to, you know, react defensively, and in his case, accusatorily, he saw all of these circumstantial things. And for him, he was connecting circumstantial dots. He developed a theory and then only accepted information that supported that theory and rejected all of the information that refuted the theory. And so it's just this, it's confirmation bias. And as an investigator, that's you have to be very careful not to allow that to happen. You can't get yourself in a rabbit hole and then refuse to come out of it when you realize it's a dead end.
Sound advice from former retired LA detective Greg Kading. Mr. Kading, again, just like I told you when we talked on the phone the first time, I definitely appreciate you spending the time to talk with me. You did not have to do that. I didn't think I had the cachet, you know, to even ask you to come on, and you did that, and I'm very grateful for it. I thank you for your time, and I just asked that if we, you know, if I have some more questions for you some other day, would you be grateful enough to let me on again?
You can call me anytime. I'm an open book, and I think it's important to share information, because if there's things like, you know, you don't come from a law enforcement background, so if I can help you understand some of the practices from an inside perspective, then I think that sharing information is important, because it'll help you to see things maybe differently.
Oh, indeed. There are some things that I started to think differently about the whole Biggie and Tupac saga. But yeah, Mr. Kading,
Yeah,
like I said,
if I need information about sports betting, I need to come to you so you can share your knowledge.
indeed, I'm an open book, like you say. Like you say. Again, thanks for talking with us, Detective Kading, and I'll be back in touch with you soon.
Absolutely.
Take care.
All right, partner. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right, pal.